So I suppose after you've decided what you want to bring into an exhibition, you have to think about a lot of different things. The first thing to assume is that the curator has seen the work already, whether that's in the artist's studio where they made it, or if it's in somebody's house. You've gone to see them to have a cup of tea and look at the work and decide that it's in good condition, or in fact that you've seen it in another museum collection. You then have to work on bringing it into the space. So you work with a transport company. They might build a crate so that it's not damaged when it's being transported. You don't just put it in the back of the car and drive it over, but this is done professionally. There are companies who look after this work. Then you bring it into the space where it is unpacked and condition checked by a conservator to make sure that it is in good condition and that you return it in good condition to the lender. And then the next idea is that you already know where that piece is going. You don't just bring in 100 paintings and hang them anywhere because they look good together, but you've already decided what story it is that you're trying to tell. There are different ways of doing that. Some curators like to use digital models or CAD drawings so that they will have a digital model of the space and they will drop in the artwork into that using digital technology. I prefer to do it on paper. So you have basically an idea that 6 works will fit in one room, for example, or 20 might fit in another, depending whether they're big or small or in between. So you have already, as I said, tried to tell the story, whether it's the retrospective or the thematic project. And then in terms of display, different objects need different treatment. So, for example, if a painting is very fragile, you need to make sure that there's glass in front of it, because if somebody accidentally touches the piece, they could break it. If it's a fragile sculpture, you'll put it in a plinth behind glass, like we can see around us here. Or if it's a sculpture that needs to go on the floor, then you might need to put a barrier around it, because obviously it is important that people don't touch things and they don't break things. Security is another idea. So the pictures that you see around you, you can't take them off the wall. They're locked onto the wall using security systems. Many of the works are alarmed. So again, if you touch them or move them, you'll set off an alarm in the museum. And these are things that we do, I suppose, as a matter of course. So we talked about some of the kind of objects that you would bring into an exhibition, and sometimes they're just too big. And this sculptor, she made small sculptures, but she also made public sculptures. So massive projects that are outside buildings around the country. And the piece behind me, it's called Sails, and it's 3 massive airplane wings that are constructed outside a building in Dundalk. And obviously we couldn't move those and bring them into this gallery. So instead what we've done is we've made a wallpaper, a picture, a photograph as big as we can to show the scale of this piece and tell its story. Then on the walls, the photographs that are around us show how she made the piece from her first idea, that's a scale model in one of the photographs, through to the workers making it in a factory in Germany in the late 1960s, bringing it over and then mounting it outside the space. And then the other thing that we see in this room is the newspaper articles. So we see how some of the journalists and critics at the time responded to it. They thought it was a very good thing. They thought it was very ambitious. So one of the things that the curator has to think about is the exhibition design, what the display will be. And there are different ways of thinking about that. If it's paintings, that's easy because they hang on the wall. And you just think about the order that the paintings will come in. But if it's sculpture, you have to think about how the sculpture will be displayed. And this room is an example of that, because everything must be kept off the floor, and you also don't want it to be touched. So rather than having 20 objects and 20 individual plinths. We designed one massive table plinth in the center so that it wasn't a forest of different things, but that you could walk around everything and see them in a certain order. It keeps them off the ground, it keeps them at eye level, and you can also see that we have barriers to keep people away from the works and stop them touching them. So you'll see going through the exhibition that there are different kinds of labels on things. Some just tell you the name of the artist, the name of the artwork, the date it was made, and the medium, that is what it was made from, because sometimes it's very interesting to know if it's a sculpture. Was it made of bronze? Is it made of stone? Is it made of resin? Because it tells you a lot about what the artist is interested in. And then sometimes you'll see a longer label. That's because we're trying to tell you a little bit more specific information about the thing. So this is an example of understanding the artist's working process, because we found photographs of her making the sculpture. It's here on the right hand side. This is a model, this is called a maquette. And so this is made of plaster, and the artist would have made this first, and then she would have made it in bronze afterwards. So this was the process of, you start with a modeled piece of plaster, and then you send it to be cast using wax and bronze. But then one of the things that we found in the archive as well was a sketchbook, and we could see that the sculpture started off as a portrait of each of her sons. So you can see 3 portraits of her sons in the sketchbook, and then she makes it into these blobs that she calls trees. And so the idea is that we then know that the sculpture here on my right hand side started off as portraits of her boys, but then she turned it into something abstract, into an idea, and so we're left with this finished object. So what we're trying to do is show you a little bit about the artist's way of making a work, and also show that we understand some of the ideas that she had in making it, and that in fact it was about her family and not just an abstract idea.